Welcome, all you sinners and sodomites, to Bible Stories for Atheists. I am Josh.
I'm Linz.
And we are your guides to the apocalyptically awful stories, literally, literarily littering the Bible. And in this episode, we are continuing to talk about the end times according to the Old Testament. We're getting into the book of Isaiah today. Last episode, we talked about Amos, Hosea, and Micah. But this one, it's going to be all about Isaiah, not Isaac. Strap in, strap on for episode 2.
That's what you're calling it?
Yeah, that is the title I came up with.
So original.
I know. Been a bit since we recorded the last episode.
It has been. I've gone on a whole trip to a high holy land.
Yeah.
Since we last recorded
Right.
the very first episode of this much delayed season of Bible Stories for Atheists.
I just had surgery.
Yep.
Which went well and everything's fine.
Yeah, he didn't. It wasn't like he must get this surgery or he'll die.
It wasn't anything like that. No.
Sort of surgery. Yeah.
No, but we've had delays.
He made his dick bigger.
Yeah. I gained a half an inch.
But I went to Italy and hung out in Rome.
Right.
My intention for going there wasn't to pilgrimage to the
But
Catholic.
you saw the pilgrimages.
Yes, but it is a Jubilee year in the Catholic religion, which occurs every 25 years. And I did go to the Vatican because if you're in Rome, you might as well go to the Vatican, right? And it was definitely ornate.
Yeah.
And full of all kinds of artwork that they could 100% sell off and, fucking feed every
Everybody.
hungry person in the goddamn world.
Right.
And
yet every day
yep.
they don't.
Nope, they don't. In fact, they charge you to come in to see the art.
Huh.
But you do not have to pay to get into the Basilica, St. Peter's Basilica. That is free.
That's nice.
You do not need a ticket for that.
Mm.
I would hope they wouldn't because it's technically a church. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But because it's the Jubilee year, there's a holy door on the Vatican and the Basilica. And if you walk through the holy door, much like the plot of the film Dogma, you get absolved of all your sins.
Yeah.
Like it's like a reset.
Yeah.
Walking through the holy door. And I did.
So take that, all you Christians out there.
Yeah. I walked. And I guess the thing that might be confusing to me now that I think about it, and I don't think I said this to you, but there was, and this is probably something they have all the time, but there are confessionals set up in the Basilica in a variety of languages. So people can confess in
multiple languages.
Many languages. But why do you need those if you're just absolved of your sin when you walk through the door?
Yeah, they're probably the confessionals don't get a lot of traction during Jubilee years.
Yeah. I felt no weight lifted from my soul.
Yeah, but others
definitely felt the weight lifted from their soul.
Really like wobbly and such.
They were definitely having feelings of perceived euphoria for sure. Like nobody was crying or having like a Baptist church level sort of experience because
right.
Catholics are very reserved. But yeah, no, definitely people were like walking through and being like, and like getting a little teary eyed and stuff like that.
All that premarital sex is just gone.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was an interesting little trip. It's funny because even though it's Rome and even though it's Vatican City, which is technically its own thing, it feels a lot less focused on the religion
Yeah.
than
Than the
any
tourism.
city fucking here in the United States of America.
Yeah.
Like in Grand Rapids.
Oh, you mean like the culture of the people?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
It's not like that's their identity.
Right. Yeah.
You know, they respect the history and the stuff like that behind the church, but it doesn't feel even, I don't know how many people in Rome are Catholic,
Yeah.
because it doesn't seem like it's a part of their, you know, personal identity. It's
Mhm. Just happens to be where
right.
the seat of it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
I did drink wine on in the Vatican Museum,
hmm
so that was fun.
Was it the blood of Jesus?
It was not the blood
Oh,
of Jesus.
shit.
That wine is not good.
No.
Oh, this wine was pretty good.
Okay.
In fact, I had bubbly wine, champagne,
Mm.
which is not Italian but
Right.
French. But
If only Jesus's blood was carbonated.
right? How awesome would that be?
I think there would be more Christians.
You know?
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't use
Especially
like
in
the
America.
absolute shit cheapest wine they possibly could.
Mhm. Or grape juice, like a
Grape
lot
juice,
of
yeah.
Protestants use.
It's so weird to me
Yes.
because it's literally like in the Bible, it's wine,
Yeah.
but they're like, we can't have alcohol. And it's
Yeah.
like, you don't get to, sorry guys, you don't get to change that just because you think alcohol is what? Satan cum
Juice.
or something like
Satan
that?
cum.
I don't know.
You should be a pastor coming up with that. Like you could totally be like a Westboro type of alcohol is Satan
Satan's
cum. Yeah.
Imbibe of the cum of Satan, and
Yeah.
you will burn in hell for eternity.
Here's some grape juice.
Also, imbibe in actual cum, and you will burn
Yeah.
for eternity. No cum-related items ever.
Basically, the Christianity just kind of comes down to this. We're against cum.
Unless it's going into a uterus to make a baby. We don't like it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even then,
Yeah.
depends on the situation.
Right.
Anyway.
Anyway, so that's fun. Yeah. So last episode, if you can remember from like, I don't know, a month ago, we talked about.
Oh, you're talking to me.
Yeah.
It was like the listeners, it's not
Well,
going to be a month.
And no,
Specifically
hopefully
me.
not, unless something's gone horribly wrong.
Oh, God. I mean, you never fucking know these days.
You really don't. No, since the last time we did the podcast, or not since the last time. Blah, 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 blah.
Last time we recorded.
Last time we recorded, we were talking about the first 3 books of the Bible that were like completed, right? So this was Micah, Hosea, and fuck, I don't have it off the top of my head. What was it?
George.
Yeah, Amos. No. The famous Amos.
Yes.
And they were all quote unquote apocalypses.
Right.
Right. So, and then the other one that was completed around this time, not really completed, but basically completed, was a book called Isaiah. Also an apocalypse.
Okay.
The reason why I don't say completely completed is because really it was just like the first 39 chapters that was done around this time. And then there was a few more stages that got added to it. So the prophets we read last time were all self-employed, independent prophets. But today we're talking about Isaiah, and Isaiah was commissioned by the king.
So this isn't the Isaiah from the stories. Isn't there an Isaiah in the family? Isn't it Abraham has Isaiah?
Isaac. You're thinking of Isaac. It's not.
Ugh, how many I names are there? 2, I guess.
At least 2. Yeah. And that's one too many. Anyway, so Isaiah ben Amoz, which I'm probably butchering, was a counselor to King Hezekiah of the southern kingdom of Judah, which is probably why this is by far the longest of the books we're covering. And as in like, because he was getting paid to write.
Oh,
You know?
sure. Yeah, you're getting paid by the word. You're going to be wordy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the longest book in the Bible. Psalms is the longest by chapters with 150. And Jeremiah is the longest by word count. That doesn't have anything to do with what's coming up. Just thought you might want to know.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
Josh's fun fact corner.
Right. The book of Isaiah was written in 3 stages. The first 39 chapters with a couple caveats that we'll get to. They were likely written by Isaiah as the original book during the same time as Micah,
Okay.
that book that we read. So about 740 BCE to 700 BCE. So just a refresher, this is right before the northern kingdom of Israel is going to fall to the Assyrians,
Okay.
right? So they're kind of talking about that. That's in the air, that's coming. Chapters 40 through 55 were written about 200 years later. This was after the Babylonians had invaded the southern kingdom of Judah in 586 BCE. And chapters 56 through 66 were written after Cyrus the Great allowed Jewish people to return to Jerusalem in 539 BCE. So, since we're looking at how the idea of the end times evolved through the Bible over time, we're pretty much going to be focusing on the first part of this book,
Okay.
right? Because that's what was during this early time, you know. We will look a little bit at some of the old later chapters, but
Is it known, like, in the Christian community that this clearly, if like they know when this was written and it was written not as one piece, it wasn't written by one person,
they who know this?
like Christians,
That's the question. Do Christians know that?
that it's not written by one person?
Like,
Do they care? Does it even fucking matter?
It should. It really should.
Okay.
If they like, honestly, it really should. But most Christians are gonna like be like, well, how would you know that, or something like that? And it's like, well, because of this list of facts, and they'll be like, well, fuck that. You know, it says Isaiah. It was all written by Isaiah.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, the fact that it's very obviously not written all by Isaiah, that it was very fucking obviously, as we'll go through, very obviously written about politics at the time, and it shifts what those politics are, like who they're fighting against and everything, who they're talking about. It shifts over time. It's really obviously not written by the same people at the same time, which means somebody at some point lied and said this was all written by Isaiah when it wasn't, right? So it's a lie in the Bible.
Yeah.
One of many that we've talked about, you're right.
Several many.
Yeah. So that's the kind of stuff that they have to like just ignore.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome. And we're actually, I do think this is going to be kind of a shorter episode because there's not a ton of stuff in here you really need, I feel like is really important to cover about it. I think it's important to, again, talk about like, what was this early idea of the end times,
Okay.
you know? And it's a foundation for like the book of Revelation and those books that come after it, right?
The metal ones.
Yeah, the ones that take these foundational blocks and build upon them, right? And so with that, we jump to chapter 2, and we get this in Isaiah. In the days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many peoples shall come and say, come, let us go up the mountain of the Lord to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. If this sounds familiar, It's because it's almost the exact same passage that comes from Micah 4,
Okay.
which we talked about last time.
Yeah.
So someone lifted the text from someone else, or they both grabbed it from a third party, something like that happened there.
Yeah. Thomas More's Utopia.
Thomas More's Utopia. Oh, because like turning, like giving up war and all that. And then we also had, for the Lord of hosts has a day against all that is proud and lofty, against all that is lifted up and high. So we have the mountain of the Lord and we have the day of the Lord. These two concepts we talked about in the last one, still here in this book, again, we talked about this, like apocalypses are a genre of writing that happens.
Sure.
And so all these different writings at the same time are using similar elements because they're all writing in the same genre.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Might as well be sci-fi or something like that.
It's like if you look at the trends in YA novels, right? Especially the ones that are kind of like the post-apocalyptic type.
Right. Or vampires for a while or something like that. Yeah.
The story, the actual storyline might be different, but the premise is all the same.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of the same elements.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping ahead to chapter 4, we get on that day, the branch of the Lord shall be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the land shall be the pride and glory of the survivors of Israel. Whoever is left in Zion and remains in Jerusalem will be called holy. Everyone who has been recorded for life in Jerusalem, once the Lord has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and cleansed the bloodstains of Jerusalem from the midst by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. I don't like Isaiah. Then the Lord will create over the whole site of Mount Zion and over its places of assembly a cloud by day and smoke and the shining of a flame fire by night. Indeed, over all the glory there will be a canopy. It will serve as a pavilion, a shade by day from the heat, and a refuge and a shelter from the storm and rain. So basically, they're saying there's going to be a cloud / ball of fire over Jerusalem all day and night, and
to protect the people.
It's like it's a pavilion.
Yeah, So okay. So
you can do your homework under the God cloud. You can make out with your girlfriend under the God cloud.
All hail the God cloud. Okay. So I could see clearly to me in hearing you read this, it sounds related to just like them taking back their land, they think, right?
Right. Yep.
But also 2,000 years later, people are using it as like the whole world sort of situation.
Will end.
Yes.
Type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not what it's saying at all because it actually says that there are other nations.
Right.
They're just not going to be fighting with each other.
Yeah, and that their area will be cleansed.
Right. Of the filth of the daughters of Zion, which I'm pretty.
They're doing today.
Well, yeah, but also that kind of sounds to me like it reads to me as like interbreeding with like the dirty non-Israelites or non-Judahites.
Sounds to me like they're trying to build a very pro-gay nation.
maybe, yeah. They just want dudes.
Yeah, dudes only.
Yeah. But yeah, it's again, not actually the end of the world,
right?
Is being described here.
No,
nobody's even talking about like there's no death. I don't think really certainly in the last ones, it was still like people would still die. You still lived your life and died. It's just, Israel's the best nation on earth, and everybody believes
everybody
in
the fuck out of here who's not us,
right?
And when you bring up they mentioned cleansing the blood from the land or whatever, something like that. Like when you say stuff like that, especially today in modern times, like that gives you like an image of war, right?
Yeah,
but really, it just means we're getting anybody whose blood isn't ours the fuck out of here,
right?
is
Yeah.
what I
Which is not good, but
No.
that's not,
Yeah.
it's a racist
No.
thing to
Right.
feel.
for
but,
sure
but it's different than,
the world
war.
is going to end in
Right.
war. Yeah.
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 One thing I thought was interesting is I feel like the definition of Zion keeps changing as I read this. And so I asked ChatGPT about it. In the Bible, Mount Zion originally referred to the fortified hill in ancient Jerusalem that King David captured from the Jebusites and made his capital.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in 2 Samuel. This area was also known as the City of David. Over time, the term Mount Zion came to refer to different areas within Jerusalem, including Temple Mount, where Solomon's temple was built. Today, Mount Zion refers to a hill located just outside the old city of Jerusalem to the south of the ancient city walls. It is distinct from the Temple Mount, but still part of the historical landscape of Jerusalem. So Mount Zion does keep changing.
It's what they need it to be at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
As everything else is in religion.
Yep.
In Isaiah 9, we get a prophecy, as you would imagine. It starts by saying that there will be no gloom for the people in anguish. People are going to rejoice because their burden has been lifted. Boots of warriors will be burned as to fuel a fire. And for a child has been born to us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Great will be his authority, and there shall be endless peace for the throne of David and his kingdom. He will establish and uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time onward and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. Now, who do you think he's talking about?
Well, David. It sounded like he was talking about David.
Well, he's talking about somebody who's taking the throne of David. So
Right.
it's probably not David. It's probably somebody else.
Well, people obviously think that means Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Christians totally look at this and think it's Jesus.
Right.
Could it be somebody else, though, that he's talking about?
Sure.
So
What
what?
he doesn't say Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he doesn't say anything about what Jesus does.
Right.
So we have Isaiah, the only one of these prophets so far that we've talked about that is commissioned by the king.
Mm.
Could he possibly
You talking about the king?
the king or the king's son?
Right.
The
Yeah.
prince?
Yeah.
Makes sense. He's getting paid by the king.
That's, yeah.
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 So
It definitely makes way more sense than like him talking about a guy that's born like
this would be
700 years later.
yeah, 700 years later.
Yeah. For sure.
Right. And has nothing to do with any of that. Yeah.
Right.
And that's all we have to say about that passage. I just calling that out is like, no good reason to think that has anything to
But
do with
it's definitely
Jesus.
used
Yes.
as a prophecy about Jesus.
Right. Exactly.
Of course, because why not make those two stories fit together?
Right. And if
Yeah.
you want to decide that that's going to be a prophecy having to do with your religion, sure, you can, but it's a weird thing to do,
Right. Yeah. One could definitely make a prophecy fit in hindsight,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially if the story's not really 100% accurate.
Right.
And you're
Yeah.
building the story and then you're fitting it to this other story. And
Mhm. Yeah.
you can do a
Yeah.
lot
If you're
with
making up
fiction.
the story
Yeah.
of Jesus,
Right.
you can make it fit these old quotes and stuff like that.
Right. I mean, it is smart. It lends more credence to the story
Mhm.
if you're making it fit things that people are still believing in 700 years later.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Or even 2,000 years later.
yeah.
In chapter 11, we get a shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The spirit of the Lord shall rest on him. The spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord.
Mhm.
He shall not judge by what his eyes see or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge for the poor and decide with equity for the oppressed of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb. The leopard shall lie down with the kid.
Yeah.
The calf and the lion will feed together. A little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like an ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all the holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Again, this is poetry too. You know, it's prophecy, but it's also poetry.
Right.
And there's something lost in translation, I feel like.
Well,
with some of it.
I
some
imagine
of the poetic
yeah.
is lost, I think.
The animals all are probably metaphors for like different people.
They could be. That's a good. I honestly always took that kind of literally, actually, but that's not a bad interpretation.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know,
you know what's funny? I think I always took that literally because of the children, the Jehovah's Witness children's book that shows that as part of the Paradise Earth.
Right.
You've seen those
yes,
pictures.
where all the animals are hanging out together with
lions
the dinosaurs.
and stuff. The dinosaurs. I don't remember the dinosaurs being in there.
I thought there was a dinosaur in there.
There might have been. I don't remember. But
a unicorn. There was something that didn't exist.
Dragon.
Something, yeah.
Yeah. Dinosaurs did exist.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I know. You know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
Like,
it'd be weird though if they
not
were
at the
like
same time as that was happening.
and the people in the Bible had no idea about
No,
dinosaurs.
absolutely not.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how we're I think you were going on something.
Well, it's funny because I started listening to what you were saying, and you were talking about how the guy was going to make judgment based on not what he heard or saw, but based on God, I guess, God feelings.
He shall not judge by what his eyes see or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge for the poor and decide with equity for the oppressed of the earth.
Yeah. So I can't, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I feel like, you know, using your senses to make decisions about things that are going around you is a pretty good thing to do.
Instead of just going off vibes.
Yeah. God vibes.
Yeah.
Apparently. But also he's like advocating for the poor and for equity, which is
good.
Fucking something people are pissed off about these days for some reason.
Right. And it seems they've been pissed off for quite a while. This seems to be a problem that goes way back.
But yeah. So who's
Jesse?
Yeah.
That was David's dad.
Oh, okay.
David's dad was Jesse.
Okay.
Yeah. This is where Branch Davidians, as in David Koresh, with Waco, get their name.
Oh.
The branch of Jesse.
Yeah.
Or the branch of David, whatever you call it.
Yeah, Branch Davidians.
Yeah. So
okay.
This was a big verse for them.
What a stupid fucking name to call yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
There's worse ones
there
out there.
There are worse Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah, you could go there. I just meant even among Christians. I was thinking like Jehovah's Witnesses, considering we figured out Jehovah is a term from some anti-Semitic Germans, and it's not even like,
right.
You know, it was a mistranslation of Yahweh.
Yeah.
But
I just don't know where you were, honestly, if I heard without any prior knowledge or the David Koresh thing happening, I would have never even knew what Branch Davidians were. And I never in a million years would have thought they were a Christian religion. I wouldn't have been like, oh, they're from the branch of David.
Yeah.
That's just not, but maybe I just don't think about that shit.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. I just remember that from watching the Waco miniseries where they were talking about it. Yeah. also, speaking of terrible names, the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, or what?
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Either way, it's a terrible name. It's way too long.
It is.
Mormons was a better name.
Yeah.
They're trying to get away from Mormon.
And I know they're calling themselves LDS now.
Yeah. I don't think they're even allowed to use LDS.
No.
I think they are like, we are the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, or whatever. Like
Jesus Christ of
Latter-day Saints. Yeah, that doesn't make sense either, though.
Well, you know.
He's not just the Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. He was of the original saints, too.
They don't believe in the original saints, I guess, is what they're saying. Just the latter-day ones.
Right.
Just that guy who wrote their book.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, and beyond. Christians typically interpret Isaiah 11, 1 through 9 as a prophecy about Jesus Christ. Obviously. So they read this and think it's about Jesus.
Right.
Right.
And that's why it's so important to tie Jesus back to David's lineage.
Yeah.
Right?
That's one of the reasons. Yeah.
But they do it through Joseph, who doesn't contribute.
Who is not. Yeah. In
DNA to the birth of Jesus in the story.
In Matthew and in Luke, they give genealogies that show that Jesus is supposedly related to David through Joseph, but Joseph was his stepdad, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And also those two lineages are different if you look at those.
Yeah.
Christians typically interpret this. So verse 1, they think the branch from Jesse symbolizes Jesus, descending from David's royal line. Verse 2, the Holy Spirit empowers Jesus with wisdom, understanding, and strength. Jesus judges, that's hard to say. Jesus judges righteously with fairness, especially defending the poor and the oppressed. I've yet to see that. His reign is characterized by righteousness and faithfulness. A future era of peace and harmony is envisioned, often interpreted as the kingdom of God, where natural enemies live together in peace, symbolizing the transformation Jesus brings. Okay, Christians. Okay. So you think these verses are about Jesus, do you? So let's take a gander at the rest of the chapter and see how that pans out, shall we? So
oh, real Canadian.
Yeah. I was channeling Letterkenny. So if we read on, we get, on that day, the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to the peoples. The nations shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious. On that day, the Lord shall again raise his hand to recover the remnant that was left of his people from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the coastlands of the sea. He will raise a signal for the nations and will assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. There's four corners on earth.
Oh,
yeah.
It's a square, not a circle.
It's a square. Yeah. The jealousy of Ephraim shall depart. The hostility of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not be jealous of Judah, and Judah shall not be hostile toward Ephraim. But they shall swoop down on the backs of the Philistines in the west. Together they shall plunder the people of the east. They shall put forth their hand against Edom and Moab, and the Ammonites shall obey them. And the Lord will dry up the tongue of the sea of Egypt, and will wave his hand over the river with his scorching wind, and will spit it into the seven channels, and will make a way to cross on foot. So there shall be a highway from Assyria for the remnant that is left of his people, as there was for Israel when they came up out of the land of Egypt. That's what this is about.
The people so this was after
this was written it seems like this was written when people were being deported to Assyria. Right. So people are getting taken to Assyria and stuff. This is being written as like, that will change. Mm-hmm. You know, God's gonna
come back.
God's gonna give us retribution. He's gonna pave a fucking highway for people to come back.
Right. Yes.
And Christians are like, but Jesus, it's about Jesus.
Yeah, he didn't do any of that.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with Jesus.
They didn't talk anything about people returning to Jerusalem in the Jesus part of the Bible.
Not really. Like you can, but again, it's still like anything that's like that in there is just filling it in for the sake of this, you know.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, but the important part is that this is not saying anything about Jesus, which is supposed to be the center of all of this.
Yeah, but really it's just about the king.
Yeah.
Or the king's son.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that lineage.
Right.
Bringing the people back to the land after this shit.
And God establishing Israel again as like the supreme nation.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, one could argue better that this is more like a prophecy about what happened after the Holocaust than it is about Jesus times.
Yeah. Yeah. You could say that.
I mean, we know what happened after the Holocaust, and they gave Jewish people back the land in Israel.
Right.
That makes more sense for that than what happened with Jesus.
Right.
I don't know who the man would be in that circumstance, whether.
Yeah. And there's plenty of sects of Christianity out there that consider that as part of end times prophecy. That when Israelites return to Israel after.
But they've done it a couple times because you said Cyrus, right? Later brings people back to the land.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's not like it's the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, and Christians still do go through this and see Jesus is the root of Jesse, uniting the nations through the gospel, that God gathers his people, symbolizing spiritual unity in Christ, symbolizing. It's all symbolism now. Old divisions are healed, representing unity among believers. Spiritual deliverance is likened to Israel's exodus, with Jesus leading people to salvation. But you really have to stretch it.
Yeah.
You really have to stretch it.
A lot of allegory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get to chapters 13 and 14. We're just going to gloss over these. Isaiah 13 and 14. Suddenly, the prophecies shift focus from Judah's current concern in 700 BCE, which would have been Assyria, like we've been talking about. And it announces the destruction of Babylon out of nowhere.
Okay.
Babylon is the empire that will eventually take control of Judah a couple centuries later. So it's pretty likely that these two chapters, like the ones that are coming later, came later. They were just inserted in here for some reason. They just threw a couple of these in the middle of this that had to do with the fall of Babylon.
Yeah. So, it seemed to fit into the
flow, I guess. I don't know. I thought it really stood out when I was reading it.
Yeah.
It was like, well, why the fuck are we talking about this all of a sudden?
Right.
You know?
Right.
But
well, if you're reading it now, it seems as though a prophecy is occurring even further in the future.
Right.
Because you now know the timeline, and whoever added this would have known the timeline too.
Right.
And if you can say, well, he had a prophecy about the shit in Assyria, and then also at the same time had a prophecy about shit that's happening with Babylon, then it really can add credence to this guy as a guy.
So what it does is it lends the priests and everybody during the time of Babylon, it lends them more credence to say, oh no, we're going to be able to defeat them. Even Isaiah said so.
Right.
And we're going to see this time and time again.
Yeah.
Coming up in the next few books we talk about too. Like, it's not just happening in Isaiah. This happens in other books as well.
They're like backstacking their fucking proof.
Yeah, they retcon it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get to chapter 24. Anyway, so it goes, now the Lord is about to lay waste to the earth and make it desolate, and he will twist its surface and scatter its inhabitants. And it shall be, as with the people, so with the priest. As with the male slave, so with his master. As with the female slave, so with her mistress. As with the buyer, so with the seller. As with the lender, so with the borrower. As with the creditor, so with the debtor. A lot of economics. The earth shall be utterly laid waste and utterly despoiled, for the Lord has spoken this word. And it continues on about how great God is and how we're all fucked. It's too bad that the people that believe in the end times don't tend to believe in global warming, because there are verses like this that also pop up. The earth dries up and withers. The world languishes and withers. The heavens languish together with the earth. The earth lies polluted under its inhabitants. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of talk about the earth shaking and trembling. This writing came shortly after they had a major earthquake in the area, so you get a lot of stuff like that. And the chapter ends with, on that day, the Lord will punish the hosts of on that day, the Lord will punish the host of heaven in heaven, and on earth, the kings of the earth. They will be gathered together like prisoners in a pit. They will be shut up in a prison, and after many days, they will be punished. Then the moon will be abashed and the sun ashamed, for the Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and before his elders he will be glorified. So, a lot of talk of whoever flees at the sound of terror shall fall into the pit, and whoever climbs out of the pit will be caught in a snare. And it made me think that they probably had a lot of sinkholes after the earthquake,
Yeah.
and that probably was causing some imagery for them, you know.
This definitely does feel apocalyptic, though.
Yeah.
Like way more than the other stuff.
It seems also a little inconsistent, where it sounds like everybody's dying, but which is not. But also, we've talked about this before. Jewish belief, at least at this time, they only seem to believe in Sheol for the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
This is an interesting thing where it's almost like the first hint of a hell.
Or
that we're getting.
Kinda. Or purgatory.
Yeah, something. But this pit, this prison concept.
Yeah. Like the pit that Batman got thrown in the Batman movie with Bane. He had to crawl out of.
Yep, exactly like that.
Yeah, like those pits.
Yeah, yep, those pits. Those Bane pits.
Okay, so I know we've been skipping around, so maybe there was something leading up to this, but this kind of feels like it just comes out of nowhere.
I mean, it's kind of like every chapter kind of is its own writing.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's again, they're poems. Yeah, it's not. It's poems.
I see.
And so
they're separate from each other.
Kinda. Yeah. There's no narrative, which makes it harder to really follow along with it as you go through. So you kind of have to just pick out the poems that seem to be more important to people.
Right. It's so so up to this point, he was Isaiah, assuming this is all one person at this point, although we know there was a couple thrown in there that weren't him, talking about, claiming the land back for the people and the different falls of empires and things like that. And it was all seemed to be very focused on the people and their land and the lineage of the people and that sort of stuff. And then boom, out of nowhere, it's and then we're all gonna die.
Yeah. Drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah.
And God, we don't know why. God's just pissed for some reason.
Yeah. And I also think it's kind of interesting that the Lord will punish the host of heaven in heaven.
Yeah, what does that mean?
That sounds to me like casting out Satan and the demons, right? So that's not going to happen until the day of the Lord, when he also does this with all the kings of the earth.
But then he says the host of heaven will rule over Mount Zion, and it's it's just a bunch of people, the host of heaven.
Yeah, it sounds like he's casting out the bad angels into the pit, which would suggest that they're not already there.
Right.
If this, again, if we're talking about reality here, all right, so Satan's not kicked out of heaven right now, is that what you actually believe? Or you think that he's not going to get kicked out until this? What the fuck are we doing here?
Well, and you're just extrapolating.
Yeah.
Nobody knows specifically what he meant by that.
Right. Yeah. Isaiah 28 through 66 contains a mix of warnings, prophecies, and promises from God to the people of Israel and the surrounding nations. The chapters start with judgments against Israel and other nations, calling out their sins and predicting their downfall. The focus then shifts to future hope, where God promises restoration and blessings for a faithful remnant. There are also prophecies about a coming servant who will suffer, but ultimately bring justice and peace. The closing chapters speak of a new heaven and a new earth where God will reign forever and all people will worship him. And we get chapter 45, which I thought was pretty interesting. Thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have grasped, to subdue the nations before him and to strip kings of their robes, to open doors before him, and the gates shall not be closed. I will go before you and level the mountains. I will break in pieces the doors of bronze and cut through the bars of iron. I will give you treasures of darkness and riches hidden in secret places, so that you may know that it is I, the Lord, the God of Israel, who call you by your name. Cyrus. So, anointed, thus says the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus.
Mm-hmm.
That word is the exact same word as Messiah. God is saying that Cyrus the Great, the Persian king, is a Messiah of his.
Mm-hmm.
I use this website called BibleHub.com for this. It's not a super easy site to use, but one thing that's nice about it is you can look up a verse, see the Hebrew words that go along with it that correspond to like the different phrases in English. And you can click on the Hebrew words and see where it's used everywhere else in the Bible, right?
Ah.
And for example, when you click the Hebrew word for anointed here, you see that the exact same word in Daniel 9 is translated as Messiah.
Ah.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're talking about a Messiah, just like Jesus.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Interesting. And
Mhm.
of course, that would have been like, of course, Cyrus was an anointed one after he returned people back to Jerusalem.
Yep.
Doesn't seem to be something God normally does, is anoint people who are not of Israel or
Right.
Jerusalem or Judah or whatever. Like,
Yep.
it is very odd that he's Persian,
Mm-hmm.
yet he's being called out as a Messiah, technically,
Yeah.
in the Bible. So that's clearly a political
Right.
writing.
And that's the thing is at the time of when they are being returned to
Yeah.
Jerusalem, it really makes sense to suck up to Cyrus.
Yeah. Well,
Because Cyrus ends up giving them everything for the temple to be
Right.
built.
yeah,
Right? So all that gold and everything that they need
Yeah.
for the temple.
he is quite the savior.
Right. Yeah.
And it probably also, like, to that exact point, is like people have been reading and taught through religion and fucking stories their whole lives that everything is guided by God,
Right.
and everything that they get is because they're from Judah and they're their chosen people. And then all of a sudden, this dude from Persia is giving them everything.
Mhm.
Well, you have to say that he's being led, like his hand
Led
is
by
being
God.
God,
Yeah.
or else you would get stuck in this thing in your head where it's like, but this guy's cool and he's not us.
Mhm. Yeah.
So why is it just us?
Also, like, why don't we worship his gods?
right,
You know,
right,
Cyrus's gods.
right.
Right. Well, no, it's because our God
Yeah,
is on his side. you
our
know?
God is using him as a tool.
Yeah.
He's his toolbox guy
So
now,
so you keep your people in their lane, still following the
Right.
priests,
and keep Cyrus happy.
and you keep Cyrus happy by saying
Yeah.
our God is on your side,
Right.
and is going to be doing all these things for you.
Yep.
You know,
Yep,
yeah, it's really crazy.
it is really crazy.
Yeah, and it's all right there.
Yeah.
It's all really.
I mean, this is
it's
the
just
first time
right
I'm
there.
hearing it. And of
Yeah.
course, my mind isn't clouded by like 40 years of Christian belief
Yeah.
and like misinformation, but it seems pretty easy to get to those conclusions.
Yeah.
If you just think about it.
Really, like, it just kind of pops up out of nowhere that they're talking about Cyrus,
right.
you know, and they're saying this is hundreds of years before Cyrus existed,
but
you know.
Honestly, to be fair, I guess, and
balanced,
like
not Fox News.
No, just to be fair.
Yeah.
I would not have known the timeline between any of those people ever.
Oh, no. And honestly, that's why pastors should be teaching this shit.
Right.
That's the thing that, like, every single fucking church that doesn't have people teaching you this is what the timeline is of the Bible is doing a disservice to their followers.
Right.
Because they're not actually teaching you what any of this means.
Yeah.
You know, what it actually means. They're just telling you what you want to hear.
Or what they want you to hear.
Or what they want you to hear. Yeah, they're just going along with tradition and not actually, like, trying to get to the bottom of what all of this actually is.
Well, the more you educate people, Josh, the more questions they ask.
I guess. That's a bad thing, I guess, you know?
Well, if you're trying to get people to blindly follow a faith, 100%, yes, that is a bad thing.
If that's what your goal is.
I don't think that I don't think there's churches that all follow that ideal. I do think there's probably churches out there who do teach the Bible maybe a little more like this.
I'm sure there probably are, yeah. But the vast majority don't. And if you're a Christian who's still believing in this and for some reason listening to this,
you are. Oh, baby, you're just asking for a spanking.
well, really, like, if you're going to a church where they're not talking about this stuff, find a different church.
Yeah.
Find one that does talk about it. But make sure that they're actually, like, giving you the full story, you know?
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, like, just throwing things together for religion, there are so many dragons.
In the Vatican?
Yeah. It's crazy. And it's because of Gregory, right? And that was his family crest. But it's not like you have to dig into it to find out that's what it is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just in, like, the holiest building in the Catholic religion, and there's just fucking dragons everywhere.
Yeah. Dragons, and I noticed keys.
Oh,
like a lot of statues holding keys and emblems of keys. And
lots of symbolism up in that bitch.
Of locks and
Yeah, for sure.
Restriction.
Big obsession, too, with, like... Like, we didn't just go to the Vatican. We went to the Uffizi in Florence and the Gallery d'Accademia or whatever it's called. And I mean, there's just art fucking everywhere in these places, like, so much. And, like, they are obsessed. And we knew this already about Catholics, but they are obsessed with Mary.
Oh, yeah.
Obsessed.
Yeah.
Like, more than I and maybe not today, but, like, historically, they appear to have been fucking obsessed with that bitch.
Yeah.
She is everywhere.
She seems to be worshipped more than Jesus actually is in Catholicism. Yeah.
For sure. It's insane how many pictures of various types of Marys there are.
Yeah. I wonder if she has kind of taken over in the zeitgeist of that culture for, like, Isis and stuff, you know, like the maternal goddess, you know,
right? Isis, the goddess, not ISIS,
the terrorist organization. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My brain got a little confused for a second.
You know what's funny? I never hear about ISIS anymore.
No, I think they're dead.
It's really like what the fuck? Anyway, let's not get into ISIS.
Yeah.
But
so that's not what we're talking about here. Anyway,
right.
But yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy. It's crazy how many, and, like, a lot. Even the Vatican Museum, like, there was a lot of pagan imagery in their old gods.
Yeah.
Old Roman god statuary and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point in time, you start getting, like, a blending. There's, like, paintings that are done that kind of blend both of those ideas together. And then there's, like, a clear cutoff where it's like, oh, white people Jesus, white people Mary.
Jesus.
Yeah, very, like, and it's, you know, the art of the area. So of course they're doing shit in their image, right?
Right.
But oh man, it's crazy.
Aggressively white.
So a lot of there are some that are better than others, but there are definitely a lot of Mary where she's very white, very blonde,
Yeah.
very young. Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh.
But anyway, I just thought that was interesting because, like I said, I mean, even here when I was going to Catholic church, like obviously you pray to Mary and like
Mhm.
there's images of Mary everywhere, but like this seemed like a lot
Yeah.
of Mary.
It also was
action.
interesting going through the photos that you took there, how it seemed like nudes had always been a really popular
Mhm.
kind of genre of statues.
Mhm.
In going back to the pagan days, because you can see all these pagan
Mhm.
statues there, but then eventually the Roman Catholic statues start popping up, and then now it's not about the gods; it's about the disciples
Yeah.
or Jesus and
The
Mary
kings,
and stuff like
the
that.
emperors,
And yet there's
yeah.
still nudes,
Yeah.
you know, and like it never really goes away.
But there was a pope
Yeah,
that covered all the dicks.
Yeah, with
fig
leaves, yeah.
or they knocked them off.
yeah,
And so that was weird to walk around and see all these really old statues
Right.
that very clearly just have a leaf plastered onto the dick.
right, yeah, because of censorship
Yeah,
by a pope.
100%.
Yeah,
They were like, all of a sudden, people can't handle looking at dicks. Tits are still fine.
yeah,
No tits got covered.
right.
No tits got covered, but that's cool. Tits, I don't think got overly sexualized
Yeah.
until our time.
I guess.
But,
yeah, The,
fucking people all of a sudden couldn't handle dicks on statues.
which I mean, let's be honest, dicks aren't
Were
great,
people
but
fucking them?
it was
You know.
it was probably just embarrassing because they were always like touching the
Yeah.
dicks.
And,
I mean, that's what I would do.
and they were all very realistic sizes. They weren't giving these men like
well, yeah, David.
giant
Yeah.
horse dicks. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
They were accurately sized.
Yeah,
Good for them.
Yeah.
They had a chance to put giant hogs on God statues and they didn't.
giant hogs.
Nope. They kept it pretty fairly
They
accurate.
kept it conservative.
I think that was probably on purpose, though, right? Because if you have a bunch of women looking at the size of guys' dicks and you see that there is a potential that a guy's dick could be huge, and then you
Yeah.
see an in real life one and you're like, what's wrong with yours?
Right. Yeah.
You have a baby dick.
Yeah. They wanted women to
Subvert expectations.
yeah, keep it calm. Yeah.
Anyway, that had nothing to do with how we wrapped this up, but
No. But anyway, that was Isaiah. That's the high level of Isaiah.
It feels like a bit all over the place, and I guess that makes sense if multiple people are writing it. There's no consistency in like how they're presenting this information
Right. Yeah.
and what information they're presenting, because like I said, it seems very much like everything's gonna be okay, guys. We're gonna get the country back eventually because
Mhm.
God loves us.
Right. And we'll be on top
And we're the best. We're the best.
around.
No one's ever gonna bring us down
Yeah.
except this next time. But then we'll come back from that too. And then,
And then
but wait.
again,
Yeah,
but-
but then we're all gonna die. I don't
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know this, but eventually God's just gonna kill all of us because he's gonna get pissed one day and not tell us
Right.
why, but just be ready for it.
Right. I know that seems really out of character for him, but
And this is an early writing. So this is before
Right.
like Judges and all of that stuff.
right. So those writings are out there probably. Like I think Judges would probably have been out there, but they would have been like loose writings that
Yeah.
like are still getting compiled together into
Right.
their own books.
Gotcha.
Right. And so they're all like a lot of those writings, the earliest ones, Genesis and such, were folklore legends that
right.
get compiled into books, and those books get compiled later than
Okay.
these books.
But the ideas are out there.
Right.
The stories of the different judges are being
Yeah.
told from person to person, and they're probably like stories.
Yeah,
in this
those-
judge is a
yeah.
story in this town, and this judge is a story in this town, and
Right.
this judge is a story in this town, and they all put them into one book and make it feel like there's a bunch of them that they
Yep.
probably all are the same person.
Yep. Like the Book of Judges is very similar to like in Roman areas where they had the stories of Zeus and the Greek gods and
Yeah.
Hercules and
Oh,
things like that.
Hercules,
you know?
yeah.
And Samson, right?
Right.
Like it comes from the same era, like where there's this great cutoff. I can't remember what exactly the term is for it, but there's this like sort of this great cutoff that happened in that area where all of a sudden like we don't really have any knowledge of what happened before that.
Mm-hmm.
All, you know, like just people lost knowledge of what was going on. So they had these folklore of like these heroes of old,
Right.
which is a line from the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the seraphim.
Mm-hmm.
But
all right.
anyway, yeah. So that's it.
Fun.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.
They all live miserably ever after. Thank you so much for checking out our podcast. Help us grow the audience by sharing us with your friends or giving us a share on social media. And we love hearing from you. You can reach out on our website at bsfa.cc. Alcohol is Satan come.